and start streaming. We are up.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the South-Afrifur podcast here at 8 o'clock at CAT. We're speaking to a very nefarious fur today, Mr. Rakuen Growlith,
Hello,
our
everyone.
resident ZA Fur admin. He, as some of you may know, he is in Austria at this point, enjoying no beer and only other alcohols. Above and beyond that, he has been to a couple of fur meets and met up with a couple of very, very interesting furs that side. So pretty much what our conversation is going to be about tonight will be about sort of his experiences of the Europeness and the furries within it, as well as...
I think it's pronounced Europality. Ugh.
Is it Europality?
No,
okay,
Europality.
good idea. Definitely Europality. Okay, cool.
And I'm here.
And Scratch is here. Unfortunately, and Napa won't be able to join us tonight. He's busy getting ready for his move up to Johannesburg.
Yes.
So, yeah, welcome to the podcast, and welcome to you, Rakuen. I remember you were mentioning that we don't re-invite you back to the channel, so
Yeah,
here
I just
you
got
are.
that rushed invite once.
This one wasn't as rushed, by the way. It wasn't like, an hour before the podcast going, dude, seriously.
It was just the same day.
Was it the same day?
Yeah, actually, I invited him today because, the past 2 days...
Everyone else cancelled, apparently.
No,
No.
this time nobody else cancelled.
You underestimate how little we planned this.
How little you plan this.
I'm sorry.
Sometimes I plan things about 2 to 3 weeks in advance. Sometimes. But yeah, the thing is that Rakuen, you were due for a re-invite. Nobody actually cancelled this time round. It's just that this past week, for me personally, has been a bit busy. And I couldn't get around to anything yesterday, so I invited you this morning-ish.
Something like that, I believe.
Apples and pears. Any case, so welcome to the podcast, and
Good to have you again.
tell everybody who doesn't know you yet about yourself.
That's quite a very general one. So, okay, I'm Rakuen. Most of you would have been on the South-Afrifur forums, where you would have met me, since I'm the admin there, and have been on since the beginning. And I'm involved in a bunch of furry things here and there.
Among them, you're a writer for Flera. What else do you do? You're admin for another site, if I'm not mistaken.
No. So I did the South-Afrifur ambassador.
Ah, of course. So for your ambassador for South Africa, or
No. It's just it's a program the site made for people that can try and make people feel more at home there, and also promote the site elsewhere.
a community representative, then, to an extent.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, okay.
It's sort of, pretty much is like that.
Awesome.
All right, so you recently, I think it was last weekend? Yeah, definitely last weekend. We were speaking to Green Raper that evening. You were at a, Lakeside Furs?
Yeah, Lakeside Furs. So I only got back yesterday.
Oh, jeez. Wow, was it like a long holiday thing?
It was from one Saturday to the next Saturday.
Ooh,
Whole week.
nice.
How many furs were there?
So there were about, I think it was just under or just over 50. Right? I think it wound up being a bit, I can find the site.
Blech. Sorry.
So
they had 51 registered, but I don't think everyone came. There was a rather interesting happening with the Slovenian group that was going to join. So, yeah.
Oh, do tell. We all love a little bit of gossip.
Okay.
What
It
happened to
turned
the
out
Slovenian group? Yes, anyway. Yeah?
there was a group of Slovenian furs, and somewhere in Slovenia there was a dog shelter that was getting shut down, and they were going to obviously have to euthanize a bunch of the dogs. So one of the Slovenian furs adopted a dog, and for that reason, about 4 of them had to cancel.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can try to figure that one out. But
I'm trying to because it's a bit more difficult than it seems.
Mm-hmm.
One adopted a dog, and 4 of them had to cancel.
yeah, well, one was obviously that guy. Naturally,
Yeah.
he had adopted a dog. But, 3 other people that don't live with him, it's like, no, we also can't come now.
Because of dog.
Yeah, because he adopted a dog.
Okay.
I guess they were somehow felt they needed to be there.
That's strange. But
It
yeah.
is. And that was like the week before it was about to start. They tried to, they did cancel.
No, that's weak sauce.
Well, I mean, spur of the moment things do kind of happen. So tell us about the Italian furs. I remember you had a conversation with one of them and mentioned him specifically. Aside from the fact that there's apparently a language gap between you and him.
Yeah, I said he should maybe come on here and talk to you guys because I thought that might be interesting. I'm not sure if he quite understood exactly what I meant there because then he started talking about trying to organize some other convention and things like that. But the part I found interesting was just when he was talking about the Italian furry community there, how it had only really been going for 5 years or so. And that was, that the furs were young and they just hadn't known there were other Italian furs around. And it was just something that I found surprising because you always think, like American and European furs, that the community's been going for ages. And I mean, that's obviously true for the American furs, but it seems like perhaps non-English speaking areas, it's not always the same. And so it seemed like the Italian and the South African forums were quite similar.
That's interesting. But yeah. Well, like you said, you always have this idea that people from overseas have have something like this like pretty much sorted out. Like they've been in the business for a lot longer than we have.
Mm.
But good to see that there's some other like fandoms that are still young and burgeoning and whatever.
Well, I mean, it's not dissimilar from the Brazilian furs at this point. I mean, they've also started their most recent con, and I mean, they hit 50 the very first time, and they're actually slowly growing. But then again, I mean, to a large extent, I think that if we look at Brazil and say look at South Africa, I think we could actually be a little bit more established. I mean, people know about us at Icon. People know about us at Geek Fest. People have seen us around at all the other places. So there is, I mean, like, and not to mention the wonderful parades that our people join. Our people, our community. So, I mean, like, at least we're out and about. And I guess in other places like Italy, not to say that they're conservative, but they could be a little bit more conservative than South African can be.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure it's necessarily the same thing there, because if you were isolated from, let's say, the furry community, and even if there were people going in a parade, you're not going to know about it.
Yeah.
So that's not going to get some sort of furry connection ready. I mean, I think it pretty much you have to have the right framework online. And they're saying now you've got the Facebooks and the WhatsApps and stuff. It's a lot easier to find groups and communicate.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is that, I mean, like, young furs aside to an extent, or at least young fur problems aside, sometimes that we tend to get every now and again. New furs, I guess, would probably be a better term for it. They do tend to reach out. I mean, like, you've never sort of had a month where one fur joins and that's that. They generally tend to sort of bring 1 or 2 friends along with them. And then obviously they get sort of mixed up in the WhatsApps and the other various groups that are out there. I mean, like, what Google Plus is actually picking up in furry numbers. It's actually quite insane. If you think
I didn't
about
join it on principle. But
Oh, at 6,000 people on a Google Plus site created practically by a South African. Yeah. It's not bad.
Yeah, no, it's not bad, definitely.
Yeah.
So we are
We don't
branching
get
out
into-
at least.
Say again, Rakuen?
I was just saying we don't need to go into the whole Google Plus why I don't like it or anything like that because it's off topic.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, true. But I mean, like, at least there are methods and means to actually get out there. I mean, like, the Google Plus is one of my ways of actually communicating because the thing is that there are people on there who wouldn't necessarily be on the South-Afrifur site and immediately finding the sort of stream because I posted on like the 3 biggest groups there. Like every single time, they tend to sort of come out of the woodwork and go, "Holy shit, they're South Africans."
Yeah, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then you point them to the WhatsApp group, and then then everything just falls into place from haha.
Assimilate.
Basically.
Yeah. Anyway, so like, how's your experience been up there? I mean, like, you've met a couple of people who used to be South African furs, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I haven't met people that used to be South African first. I heard about there being 1 or 2 South Africans that were up and around. And I met one fur who's been to South Africa a couple of times. I've actually met a couple of people who've been to South Africa.
Willing to come again if there was a con?
Well, I did mention, the con to a few people, but, it's quite a long way and a lot of money to get down there for, a small furry convention.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I was talking to Tanit, was at the meet, who I think you should know because he's on the IRC group.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. Tanit has been popping in and out.
Yeah, so, I mean, I told him to talk to you, Ivic, because he was going to come in about 6 weeks to volunteer at some wolf park again. I mean, not wolf, lion park.
Yeah, it was a lion park, yeah.
Yeah, but he hadn't heard back or anything, so I said, well, if he needs a place to stay, maybe you'd be able to help out and you'd know people, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
No problem.
But yeah, so he also had some really nice pictures of his time there, so...
Huh. All right. Any news from Flavor that you want to sort of elaborate on? That you've recently posted?
Yeah, my involvement with Flavor is, more if I write something and post, news and opinions on there, there's not too much Flavor news that goes on. It's just a place for people to sort of put out their own ideas and to create content. So...
No, but I mean, in some of the content that you've created, I remember we were speaking about. We had a very, very sort of, one could call it a very shortened version of conversation in respect to furry music. And now having you on, I mean, it would actually be an interesting thing to actually talk about it with you right now while we're at it.
Well, I mean, slightly related to that was, I mean, because I'm going to go to Eurofurence next month, so part of the, furry music and defining the furry fandom, if you remember, I wrote about that like 3 or 4 years ago or something.
Yeah.
I think it was 3 years ago. But I mean, I was going to put that into a sort of talk, some sort of presentation at Eurofurence. And I mean, I also talked a bit about that, just normal conversation at Lakeside Furs. So, I mean, it was quite nice to just be thinking about it again. But I mean, we could talk about it here as well.
Well, I mean, it is one of sort of like the main topics, and well, not necessarily one of our main topics, but the thing is that it is something that, I mean, would need a little bit of elaboration because, I mean, you've mentioned while we were talking about it on 2 or 3 different points, and we haven't necessarily like sort of directly involved ourselves with the conversation. I mean, now would be as good a time as any.
Yes. I'm not sure what you want me to say about it, or if you want to just start somewhere.
What was the original premise? Why exactly would you, or were you interested in the sort of like that idea and that concept?
Well, I was just going on, I mean, it's from earlier, it's been sort of the saying what is and isn't furry. And the issue with the music, I can't remember what inspired me to do that post at that time, but it's I mean, if we take Foxamore, for example, he's like really well known as a furry musician,
Yeah.
but a lot of his stuff is just instrumentals, you know?
Mm.
And so you got to ask, how is that then furry?
But I mean, in that
yeah,
same sort of sense, like a song like "What Does the Fox Say," would you consider that to be furry music?
well, I don't think there's really anything furry about that, except I think they dress up as a fox once. But
Well,
I would
but
say you'd need, yeah.
it does have the topic. That's the thing. Like, I mean, like, what do you discount and what do you sort of place into the entire thing?
Well, as I was saying, it would have to be some sort of furry content. In this case, almost certainly in the lyrics. But I mean, what does the fox say? There's nothing about like an anthropomorphic fox or a furry fox or any relation to the fandom. I mean, if you're just going with what does the fox say, that could just be a normal animal drawing. That wouldn't be furry. So, yeah.
That's true.
And then remakes of like popular music with different lyrics, things that like people like Duke the Dancing Dog works on, tends to do that quite often. There's that one Tiger. What's it? He sang a song called "I Can Play My Keyboard in My Tiger Suit."
I don't know the song, but I mean, I did mention that you can do the remixes and it can take a non-furry song and make it furry. So, I mean, there was that All the Single Furries parody of the Beyonce song. I mean, that was one I used as an example. So there they've changed the lyrics and, you know, they've done the music video all in fursuits. So there you've got the furry aspects there. But I mean, if you just... I mean, some people might say then, okay, you're saying furry music because it's music done by a furry, but that's using the adjective furry in a very different way to the normal furry art depicting a furry character. And so, like I've mentioned, you wouldn't say furry cooking. And if somebody just drew a landscape, but they happen to be a furry, that wouldn't be furry art. I mean, you wouldn't say like, oh, look at this landscape, it's furry art because Blotch did it. I mean, maybe some people would, but I would think most don't.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Like, just the fact that it's done by someone who happens to enjoy a certain subculture or whatever doesn't define it. Like, everything you do in your daily life isn't furry X.
Yeah. And I can't see any reason why you'd suddenly make an exception just for music.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like,
In silence.
No, it's just sort of thinking about like what would be a follow-up question in respect to this. So I mean, like obviously now you've made this sort of we'll call it a scientific observation for now, but like in respect to what can and what cannot be called something and something else, like what was the exact sort of like principle of how you sort of defined that? I mean, like what was your well, let's talk about your inspiration about this. Like, what inspired it?
Specifically on the music part?
On the music part, yeah.
Yeah, like I said in the beginning, I can't remember why I wrote that one at that point. I think I just probably seen it referred to, you know, people saying like furry music, you know, a number of times, and then eventually I was like, okay, let's say something about this. I mean, I can check in the piece and see if I mentioned why I did it. But
I mean, like, while you're at it, I mean, like, obviously, when we look at, say, furry music videos, taking, say, popular songs and actually then recreating them for, say, their own things, I mean, like, again, I'm going to mention him probably about on 2 or 3 more occasions, but I mean, Duke the Dancing Dog tends to use, like, songs and obviously, I guess would the term be furifies them? Scratch help me out here.
I don't know. I suppose that would be it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that does that even count as it? I mean, the thing is that it's not an original piece. It's just somebody who's taken the liberty to change the lyrics around a bit. Firstly, for copyright reasons, and secondly, for like, you know, their own personal like projects and things like that. I mean, in that same sense, I mean, people could bronify practically everything. If you really wanted to, you could go out as a brony master and, gotta catch all the different types of
I've
ponies out there.
seen like My Little Pony crossed with most things. But yeah, I'd say you can make it furry that way. I mean, you can think about it, it works in all sorts of other examples. So let's say, like, remember Let It Go from Frozen? Everyone was like that. And then they made the metal versions and, rock covers and stuff. And that music was then metal and rock, because of how you change it. And in the same thing, if you had someone that made a sculpture of the Statue of Liberty, but instead did it as a vixen instead of a human female, you wouldn't say, is that actually a furry statue now? You'd say, well, that's a furry statue. Or if you redraw the Mona Lisa, again, you do the change, and then there's that aspect that now makes it furry.
Kinkin Zade mentions that, the entire thing that's dancing, and he believes that it's personally different. I mean, at the end of the day, you're literally using preset dance moves and sort of incorporating them into a fursuit.
Well, I'm not sure about the Duke stuff, if he just dances or if they change the lyrics or something. So, yeah, I don't know what exactly happens. But
I can give you an example, but I mean, obviously you can't necessarily watch it on the stream.
Yeah, it would be.
Otherwise, we will hear your music. Yes, and then we'll have copyright law problems.
Yay.
Yay, yeah. Carry on.
Yeah, no, I was thinking more along the lines of someone like Lapfox, Renard Queenston, like the music that he writes, like it's again not specifically pertaining to any one part of the fandom, and like not all songs, if any, actually really have any like furry terminology or connotation to them. But he very like all of the characters that he creates that quote unquote makes his music, like for every style there's a different character. Those are all like, or at least most of them, anthropomorphic characters. Like, does that qualify? I mean, it's sort of definitely pointed at that market, but that what he's selling isn't the actual product itself isn't really like pertaining to the anthropomorphic sort of fandom, I believe.
I didn't quite get what was going on there.
No, I'm just saying, like, something that, yeah, you mentioned something that's created by a furry is not necessarily like always furry art or furry music or whatever. But
yeah,
he, like someone like Bernard Queenston, is really kind of using it as a little bit of, I would say, a marketing tool, but he has quite a bunch of followers in the furry fandom just because of the fact that every persona that he has that creates these different kinds of music are all like furries. Would that count? Like, is that aimed at, it's being marketed almost directly at furries, but it's not specifically furry. Like, does that count?
well, I'd say in those situations it sounds like it would be furry. Then I'm the sort of one that says, if it's furry is determined by the content, not who makes it. So I'd say, there's some Disney movies, yes, they're furry. Like Robin Hood, I'd say, is a furry movie, even if it's not made by furs or for furs, just because of the content, it's furry.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, Ivic, did you find what you were looking for?
Yeah, I posted it onto the thing. It's for those of you who will be listening to this after the stream. It's Duke the Dancing Dog's "I Like How It Feels" music video. There is an extensive bit. I think it's a small rap piece done by the tiger that I was speaking about earlier, who actually sort of changed the lyrics a bit. Jeez, now I've got to find the lyrics for this.
Nah. No, never mind. We'll find it.
Yeah. But in any case, those of you who know the video, or will see the video directly after they've listened to this, it does have some sort of extensive, what one could call furry lyrics in it. But I mean, in that same sense, it's also different. It's difficult to an extent to say talk about furriness in the same way that you would also say talk about being a werewolf. I mean, does being a werewolf count as being furry?
Well, I'd put it pretty much, yeah. I'd say most people consider werewolves to fall under furry with the transformation and all that. So,
Yeah. But there's obviously a lot more sentience in that sort of kind of perspective as well. I mean, as we know, werewolves of lore, they tend to be a bit more or a bit less cognitive or in control of who and what they are as soon as the full moon comes up and things like that. I mean, like, if that's the case, when it comes to furry music and werewolves, there's, I mean, a song by Iced Earth, I'm pretty sure you might know it, called Wolf, that talks about pretty much the sort of quintessential werewolf, the sort of what people wrote about it, what people made movies about, all that kind of stuff. Would you call that furry, though?
I've heard of the band, don't know the song. I'd probably say it could be, yeah. I mean, the thing you'd go on to then, if you're worrying about the mental ability, is whether you think that having the human mental condition is necessary for something to be furry. And so then you'd ask, you know, if you have a definite furry anthropomorphic fox that had the same mentality as a normal fox, would you still consider the character furry? If that's what you're getting at with the werewolf thing, I think.
That is kind of what I'm trying to mention, yeah.
Yeah, in my earlier attempt to define furry, I said, you know, it just has to be a sort of significant mixing of the human and non-human. And so I would say in that case, it would be fine. And you could maybe, I mean, the one that might be more controversial would be if you just had, you know, instead of taking the human body or taking a human and changing the body, if you just change the mind to be more wolf-like, even without the body, if you'd still consider that furry, I guess. If you're going it as a purely shape and physical transformation, or if you think the mental thing's essential, or which part do you want to focus on? But I mean, that's partly why I was saying you need to have a definition, is so that everyone's saying the same thing when they say this is furry and this is not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does make sense. Well, there's sometimes having like too strict a definition just sort of bogs down people's sort of. It raises the barrier to entry for some people who would like, say, "Oh, this is kind of cool," but then someone would naysay them for being wrong on one or two of the more technical aspects. So, I mean, I suppose like the definition that we have as sort of general as it is good enough for most people in the fandom. But yeah, the people outside might find it a little bit like too technical or too like constraining if you put too many adjectives and yes buts to it.
Well, that was one thing that came up at the meet when I was talking to people, and so, I mean, they'd asked the question at first, how would you describe furry to like an outsider? And then when I mentioned my way of defining furry, they were saying one of the things that came up was, yeah, okay, that's more of an internal furry definition because it might not be a great one to start explaining with.
What was the definition?
The one that he gave, like
my original one with the mixing human and animal and significantly different to the original forms, that sort of thing. You might have seen it at some point, but they were saying that's more of an you would use that one with other furries to try and find out exactly what you would call furry. But if you're talking to someone from outside the fandom, then just saying anthro-animals would be general and simple enough. And so, yeah, it'll again depend on the context.
I mean, we have spoken about sort of like how one defines the entirety of being furry, and I mean it generally sort of moves into the entire idea of how did we find it, I guess, which has been sort of like a general theme as to what we do speak about a lot of the time on the forum. We've never actually found out whether you agree or disagree with our definition, in respect to the idea that like it's people who like the idea, and I'm pretty sure that Anpu would be able to say this a bit better than I do, but people who like the idea of, you know, watching animated characters like that and seeing them sort of come to life to an extent, or do you think that's also too complicated?
It's pretty similar to what I would say, actually. So, I mean, I think that's fine. I would, for example, mine, I would just say then a furry is someone with a preference for furry characters. I mean, which is quite similar to that. So
Yeah,
I think that's the right way to go with it. I mean, because I don't like the way of trying to say it's got something to do with an identity and identifying as some other animal, because I think that would exclude a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe not a lot,
Scaly's fault.
but no, I mean that's, you know, false. And
Yeah.
and it's just a silly sort of, yeah.
I mean, you've been in the fandom for probably more than since 2008, but I mean, like, have you noticed any sort of distinct changes? I mean, you involve yourself quite deeply in a lot of things, I guess, and I mean, I'm assuming that like your findings might be different from somebody else, but I mean, has anything changed since sort of like your inception into the entire thing? Try to be as
In terms of
honest as possible.
definitions, or in terms of
In
how
terms of like community-wise, both South Africa and throughout the world, from what you've seen.
well, I'd say there've definitely been changes. I mean, the biggest one I'd say is that it's moved. I mean, now pretty much everyone's, you know, on Fur Affinity or, you know, So Furry or Ink Bunny or whatever. But when I was first getting into it, I mean, I wasn't as involved, but there were a lot more smaller sites. So either targeted to specific things. So a site, for example, I was on a site that was just about Pokemon, for example, and there were sites for just The Lion King, and there were sites where just people would go to do, you know, some role plays. And
Sonic the Hedgehog.
yeah, well, didn't know anything. Well, I knew about it, but I had no involvement with that. But there was also, I think, because, you know, Yahoo used to have that GeoCities thing. So there were a lot of furs that also used to have their own private little pages.
Yeah.
So I
And
know there
Yahoo
were people.
groups as well.
Yeah, well, those are still around, I think. But
I don't think they necessarily. I mean, I joined a whole bunch of those groups when I first started out, and eventually it sort of degraded to a large extent to a point where I don't think necessarily that Yahoo security is as strong as it should be, specifically because every single update that I've ever gotten from Yahoo ever since has been, you know, a single woman looking for you in your area. I mean,
few emails like that recently.
say again, which one?
I've got a few emails like that as well.
yeah.
But I mean, so I think in that way, the furry fandom's moved a bit away from being sort of split up and more individual into now everyone uses, you know, one of, let's say, 4 or 5 mainstream sites, which is perhaps a bit sad in some ways. Perhaps it makes it easier then to find people, because, I mean, you don't go through the effort of trying to set your own thing up. But
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, like with and I know that your dislike of Google and Gmail and all of that kind of stuff, especially the Google Plus thing. I mean, it does allow one to actually create little Google groups and have little RP sessions with the friends that you happen to find on there, at least. And so, I mean, I'm not necessarily sure whether it's gotten rid of the entire idea of sort of like having individual small groups of people with like-mindedness. It just brings them closer together so that they could split off eventually.
well, it's Well, you could put it that way. It's a sort of, but everything's still then under, Google. So you've moved from like lots of little places where you can get together to maybe making your own smaller places, but under certain big sites. I mean, I suppose that's really been the case for the internet as a whole. I mean, you used to have, a whole bunch of search engines. Now it's pretty much just Google that people use. And, you didn't have, I mean, everything if you want videos, you pretty much use YouTube. If you want, otherwise you use Facebook and you use Google, and, that's the only site you use. So it's not separated.
Mm.
I mean, I don't know if that's, maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's not. It's
Depends on how benevolent Google will be.
well, not just Google. I mean, now you've got, for example, for Affinity sold to some private company, if, a large amount of your users, a large amount of the furry community uses FA, and then let's say Invu changes something, it's going to have a large effect, and I know a lot of people now go and make other accounts, but they might not have the backups. Whereas if you had your own little site, you were pretty much in control what happened there. And if something, some other site went down or had some problem, it didn't affect you.
Yeah.
Now you're just very dependent on these main sites.
Yeah, if one of those main sites went down, you're kind of shit out of luck.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. That's an interesting perspective, I guess. I mean, it's obviously something that must be watched out for eventually. But I mean, if I can remember some of the things that I could find, and some of the sites have become defunct over the years, but at least they still exist. Every now and again, I still go to a couple of them, and I go, nostalgia, and then I leave it alone.
Exist, but then they get closed down, and
Macrophile has been running for I don't know how long. It's been running since 2001, if I can remember properly, because that was my first encounter with it when I was still in primary school. Haha, yes, that's exactly right. I'm answering myself, and I'm answering the questions as to whether I was watching porn when I was 13. Yes.
Cool. Can I take a shovel away from you now?
Says you, by the way.
I don't implicate myself in anything.
I implicate myself in everything.
Exactly. You do you, then. You do you.
Well, then fine. I'm not speaking for you or for Rakuen, for that matter. I'm literally just speaking for myself. The thing is that those things were around. They were around, and they're still around. They're just not being used by anybody right now. Nobody's uploading to them. I mean, it's the same thing with the RTT system. I mean, how many people actually... What am I talking about? I'm talking about absolute bull crap right now.
You're talking about RSS.
RSS, that's the word.
Don't people use that? I still use that. All my live bookmarks are RSS.
A lot of people have started moving away from that. Don't exactly know why.
I mean, it used to, and like there was a big article about the entire thing, that the RSS feeds were. Oh my god. Sorry, I was distracted. Like they're busy moving towards proper news sites. I mean, obviously, once again, Google's name pops up again, because I tend to use Google News. It gives me all the news that I need to know, and anything beyond that, I try to search for. Or I go to the Young Turks, which is on YouTube, which is also Google. And to an extent, we can probably all feel very, very sad that, we don't know all the intricate things anymore. We don't go to all the, small little places, those little nooks and crannies that we used to like. But, I mean, at the end of the day, information has to be made free and has to be as fast as possible, I guess. And I'm not necessarily sure whether going through an RSS feed and scrolling all the way down until something actually catches your interest is a way that a lot of people really want to do it anymore, unless you're a hipster.
No.
But how else? I mean, if you've got one of these other feeds, you're still going to have to scroll through everything that comes up.
Mm. But the thing is that it's a lot of the time it's more relevant already.
But that just depends.
It's like going through your favorite. Look, it's like going through your favorites list on FA. I mean, a lot of the time you will, and at least maybe I'm the only person who does this, but a lot of the time I would open up my favorites list, or at least the ones of people who've posted recently. Scan through the minor images or the small images, the little icons. See what I like. Open those, and then the rest of them get put into my "I have deleted you" pile.
I don't see any reason to do that, but I mean,
Well, I
I
don't
think
see any reason to open up all the other pages if I'm not necessarily going to like the art as soon as I've seen the icon.
but that's not favorites. You mean your watch list?
Yeah, my watch list.
Okay, because you said your favorites.
Yeah.
So,
That's what I meant. I'm sorry, my mistake.
okay. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of people probably watch artists a lot more than I do. I mean, I've been far more select, I think, but
Scratch,
it's
how many
really
artists
then.
do you watch?
Uh,
Let's do this. Let's yeah. For Affinity FAO.
God damn it.
Ta-da. Open yours.
No, I wish you'd
Oh,
ever.
glorious foxbutt. Tell me your secrets.
Let me see. I have to log in. How many people am I watching? I think it's quite a few.
Okay, I've been registered since 2006, apparently. I have a full list of 229 watching.
Okay, well, that's a fair
And
amount.
you?
1 sec.
I'm just trying to see all where I've got all the people that I watch.
All the people that I'm watching, 217.
Okay, well, I mean, I've got my sort of secret FA that I'm not supposed to have. But I mean, that one I'm watching 78 people.
Okay.
So, I
I
mean,
can see, but then again, I mean, like, you have to be select sometimes. I mean,
well, yeah, I mean, if it sounds like if you're watching too many people, then yeah, obviously you're not going to get the things. But if you've got a feed that's more select, like, okay, these are the things I want to follow, then
is that just by tag or by what?
well, it depends. I mean, I tend to only watch artists if I've seen them, that I've seen their work somewhere else and saved it, 3 or 4 times in the last, whenever. And I'm like, okay, I'm saving this person a lot. I should watch to make sure I don't miss anything. That's sort of the way I go. Because otherwise, if it's just, they've done 1 or 2 nice things, it's like, okay, I'll just take that. And, if I miss the next thing they do, it doesn't matter. Because I'm probably not going to care.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah, and I mean, if it becomes, even on my FA as well, it's just become a little bit too cluttered. Sometimes there's like an ongoing comic strip that I'm not really into, or like images from a set that I'm not really too keen on following. I mean, you skip through, or just like leave alone about a half of that list on my watch list at least. Like,
It's if I clear out and say, okay, I'm not going to look at any of these pictures that are on the watch list, it's usually because they're character sheets or works in progress or commission prices or something. But most of the time, if there's someone that I'm watching and they post something, I'm going to look at it and save it. It's that's like 90% of the stuff that I see on my watch list I keep.
Yeah, well, I'd say about 50%. I tend to favorite.
yeah, mine's a little bit less. I'm picky.
I'm very picky
then,
as.
I mean, FA doesn't have it, but if you go like, actually, I don't browse Surfer as much as I probably should, at least not for art. But Surfer and Ink Bunny also, they both have those, popular, and which will tell you, the past 2 or 3 days, these are, the 100 most popular images. Or, I mean, Surfer has also got these featured ones. So, it's where people have said, okay, these are really good. It's something other people should be aware of. So you don't even need to watch everyone, because if you just want to get a good piece every now and then, you can find them that way.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, and I think a lot of Ink Bunny also pushes their sponsor stuff a little bit, don't they? Like, not extremely, but I do believe there is like a slot somewhere for stuff that's been posted by sponsors.
I'm not aware of it.
I think there's a spot like that, or is it just it could just be like they get a little tag next to their name. I think that's what I'm thinking of.
South-Afrifur and Inkpenny both give sponsors, and next to their name, you wind up with, bronze sponsor or whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, I've now got a bronze sponsor from South-Afrifur, but on Inkpenny you wind up, I think it's different colored medals, or I think you get a leaf if you're a past sponsor.
Yeah, I remember that. That's what I'm thinking of. What was I gonna say? Oh, you said you were going to Eurofurence in a while, right? Like in a week or so?
No, next month.
Next month, sorry.
It's like a couple of weeks.
Someone's echoing. Does someone have the mic on? Okay, cool. What's the expected attendance for that thing? I mean, like the Lakeside one you mentioned was about 50 people. What's Euroference's like expected attendance?
I think last year was around 2,000 people.
Nice. Is that the first like big con like that you went to, or?
Well, I haven't been there yet, but it will be.
Nice. I would actually like to check back with you at some point afterwards when you come back from that, because I want to hear what that like massive con experience is like.
It's probably quite different. I mean, I talked to a couple of the people at Lakeside Furs, and some of them have been to Eurofurence once or twice, but then they're like, a big con is not as nice, so they preferred then to go to the smaller ones. I suppose it depends. I mean, talking to them, I might not like it because it sounds like it's a lot of parties and things, and I'm not a big party person. So, yeah, and I'd also heard before that, I mean, for Eurofurence, it was best if you actually went with someone. So you already know someone, you have someone to spend time with and talk to. Because, I mean, if there are 2,000 people, even if you meet someone on the first day, you're probably not going to find them again the second day. So it's...
Yeah. Well, I mean, unless they give you their room number and then ask you to come upstairs.
Yeah, that could happen.
Has that happened?
Dude.
What? With me or in general? Because I'm pretty sure it's happened.
I'm pretty sure it's happened, but I mean, has it happened to you?
Dude. Fucking
What?
Don't pry.
It's a weird question.
Do not pry.
This is the place for weird questions.
Ugh, no.
Look, do you remember that I was the same person who asked EC's PA whether he was going to marry her?
Ugh. You, dude. I don't know.
Look, I mean, it's just interesting. I mean, like those kinds of stories are things that I think, to a large extent, don't necessarily get spoken about by the people themselves. I mean, like, what was the? Okay, let's put this into a different.
Yeah, for good reason.
Like, let's put this into a different perspective. Okay, what is the weirdest thing that happened in this past week?
Like
weirdest thing that happened
at Lakeside Furs, I'm assuming.
I'm not sure. I mean, things are so different between outside of the furry fandom and inside.
Within the furry fandom, do you have you must have stories by now about this guy, got caught on a flagpole by his pants because he jumped from the third-story building.
No, nobody did anything crazy like that. I mean, I think it was... I mean, it's also possible I didn't hear things. I mean, one of the, I wouldn't say negative things about Lakeside Furs, but difficult for me was, I mean, it was an Austrian convention and most of the people were either Austrian or German, so most of the conversations were in German. So there could have been some things going on that I didn't know about. But I don't recall seeing anything particularly strange. I mean, it was furries being furries.
Yeah, someone probably got drunk and puked in the river. That's about it.
There's a river in Austria? Oh my goodness, why did I ask?
Lots of rivers. Yes.
No, it's called Lakeside Furs. I would assume that there would be some sort of body of water involved.
Well, technically, it's no longer near a lake. They're moving near a lake again next year, but...
God damn it. These people.
Do you see? Now that's an interesting story.
It's just, they used to be at a house that was on a lake. It was Lakeside Firs. I don't know why, but I think it was just this year and last year they moved to some other place where it was no longer next to a lake.
Okay.
But they're moving to another one where a lake will be 5 minutes away.
Awesome. Keep the dream alive.
But there was something in the rules about, not drinking, so much that you wind up, throwing up somewhere or whatever. Although I should mention, they did take donations during the early parts, and then it was the Thursday, they did have a bar open with 2 Firs doing the bartending and free cocktails. So
that's awesome.
It was pretty cool because you could have like all these fancy things and everything was free. Okay, you'd already donated, and they collected I think it was 125 euros that they spent then on alcohol. Most of it was left over. So, yeah, it was a good time.
Seriously, there was alcohol left over.
Yeah, it seemed a bit quiet, I must say. There was supposed to also be a furry disco at the same time.
Was it actually disco music?
There was music. It wasn't all disco-y, and they had a strobe light and some of those multicolored laser things, but I think I saw 2 people dancing, and that was it. And that was just a short time as well.
Was there a dance-off at all, or was it just a get-together?
Maybe there was after I'd gone to bed. I don't know. I could hear music still, but I wasn't there the whole time. I was doing other things. But yeah. But I didn't see everyone all the time. Would you like to come
upstairs?
Dude, sorry.
I don't know where everyone was all the time. Because sometimes it seemed like there were only half the people around. I don't know. Yeah, they could have been doing other things.
Or other people.
Or
I heard that one of the biggest things in it wasn't AnthroCon, but it was one of the things that Space Bear Sparks actually had a podcast about it when they were doing MFF, and one of the stories that they had that came out of there was that obviously the people had what they call a underwear party.
Yay!
If there was, I wasn't invited.
Damn. Okay, cool. So when you come down to South Africa for the South-Afrifur, we'll make sure that there's an under party.
An under party.
The party is all the way downstairs this time. Anyway.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and an underwear party, and then you'll be invited. Is that okay? Would you find that to be acceptable?
God damn it, Ivic.
Yeah, that would be interesting. But I don't think I'm coming down for South-Afrifur, unfortunately. Not great in that timing for me. But
No.
Okay, understood. So sad.
So sad.
You'll miss out on you'll miss out on your second underwear party. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
That's okay.
You can organize that, Ivic.
I'm totally organizing an underwear party. No, I'm not.
Yeah. I honestly don't know whether to believe you or not.
If only you knew. Cat! Sorry.
Meow.
Yeah. No, the cat's getting quite wonderfully vocal about everything. She loves everyone here, by the way, those of you who were wanting to figure that out. Okay, so we've covered the... so you're actually going to speak at Eurofluence? You're going to have your own little sit down.
I applied and I talked to the events people about getting, a session. So what I'm supposed to be doing is actually putting slides together so I can present something. Mm-hmm. I've done a lot of thinking about it, not so much slide making.
Okay. You've spoken to Zen?
No.
I swear you mentioned...
I know he's now living in the UK, and I'd seen a suit that looked like his character at Eurofluence, so he'll probably be there, and then I might try to talk to him. I mean, I do like his art, and he is also from South Africa, so...
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Any other notable furs that you've met that side?
But like famous furs or people
Yeah,
that were
well,
interesting?
both.
I know a couple of people that were interesting. I mean, like I said, the issue for me was a bit of a language barrier because, I mean, furs are, I mean, furs are generally really nice and friendly, but if they're speaking in German, you can't exactly sit and listen to the conversation and then join in when appropriate. You'd either have to interrupt people or yeah, something like that.
Or
So,
tap somebody on the shoulder and go, "What was he saying?"
well, I did have to do that a couple of times because sometimes they'd start talking about something like, quick translate, what's going on?
Mm.
And then, find out, okay, this is what's happening now. But,
Okay.
but I mean, most of the time, it was cool. I felt slightly better. There was one Russian fur there who didn't speak German or English. I mean, I think he understood a bit of English because he'd done it at school, and he could, you knew he understood certain sentences, but I mean, he couldn't talk to other people really. But there were some other Russian furs. So I mean, that was the thing. There were German furs and Austrian furs that obviously could all talk together in German. Then there were like some Italian furs that came in a group and spoke Italian, and there were some Russian furs that were in a group and spoke Russian. So,
And apparently the Slovenians just weren't there.
no, there was one guy from Slovenia.
So he's like the only person on the party bus. More booze for him. Great idea.
Let's just make sure it was Slovenia, in case I got it wrong.
Well, it could be Slovakia.
Slovenia, Slovakia, what's the difference?
What's it?
Scratch.
Yeah, Slovenia.
Okay.
The two things I hate in this world.
I think there were actually more than one. I mean, the thing is, they're like 50 people, none of whom I've met before, and basically I talked to the organizer online, and that was pretty much it. I'm not a great people person, so I didn't know everyone. I couldn't recognize everyone. I mean, I start to, okay, those faces are familiar, but I only talk to a couple of people, or at least with any regularity.
All right, but I mean, like you've gone to a couple of like smaller just get-togethers and things like that, and obviously they've got to sort of at least attempt to accommodate you, right? How is the accommodation there? I mean, like for people who are from more English backgrounds.
In the furry fandom or in the city itself?
In the city itself, like when you do go to like outside meets and like small meets and go to the random, meet down by the bar.
Well, I only went to that once, but I should actually go again because now I know a bunch of the furs that I met actually live in Vienna. So, but it's not too bad because I mean Vienna is a very international city. I mean, it's got like the United Nations is there and some various other things. Plus, there's a lot of non-Austrians as well. And most, especially the younger ones, most people there actually can speak at least some English. So you can get by fairly well.
Any animosity towards English people?
Well, when I was
the
guessing...
French, the French are pretty what would the term have animosity towards? No. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, I don't think there's one using animosity, but there was just one guy when I was trying to get a year pass for the public transport who I think resented me not speaking German, but otherwise people have seemed all right. I mean, again, there's not too much where you need to actually speak to people because, I mean, most of public transport, you don't speak to anyone. You just sort of get on. I mean, that's something I guess wouldn't work in South Africa, but there's a lot of trust. So nobody actually... I've had my train ticket checked once in, 7 months that I've been here. Otherwise, you can just get on and off stuff without a problem. And it's sort of, you just have to do it yourself. And there are big fines if you are actually caught, but...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you ever used Afrikaans as a failsafe?
I have not, no. Plus, I keep saying when occasionally, the different languages comes up, I understand most of Afrikaans, but I really can't say much offhand, because I can't think up the words and the sentence structure properly. So it's something I understand but can't really speak. So, I mean, if it came to it in South Africa, it would be, sort of thing, they speak in Afrikaans, I'd speak in English and have a conversation that way.
Yeah. All right. So, wow, okay, so you've never had an opportunity to actually test that theory for us. Because people keep on saying that. I mean, if you're somewhere in Europe and people resent you for being English, speak Afrikaans and they'll laugh at you for about 5 seconds and then accommodate.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true, but I haven't had... Yeah, I mean, it depends, I suppose, what you do. I mean, I mostly go to work and then go shopping where you pretty much put stuff in a trolley and pay at the end. So it's not a huge interacting with random people.
Now,
yeah.
apparently there's something, what's it? In some countries, I think, what I'm thinking of is France, or...
Flemish, yeah.
No, but like in France, if you speak English and they can detect that that you come from the US, they immediately shut you out and
spit in your food.
Yeah, are mean to you. But as soon as they realize you're trying to either speak French to them, but you're making an effort, or B, are from some other English-speaking nation, they suddenly become the friendliest people in the world.
Yeah,
apparently.
I did mention it because there was a French guy I know here, but I can't remember. I think he said it was mostly Paris or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because Paris is the California of France. Or something. I don't know. The Quebec of Canada.
I don't know. Paris is not in Canada, I believe.
Is there a Paris in Canada?
No, there's a
I
Paris
have
here in
no
South
idea.
Africa. There's a Paris.
There's a Paris here in South Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a London in Canada, apparently.
I'm going to put my Fox's Pictures link into the chat. There we go.
Sure.
Just because, I mean, since we've slightly... Well, we're sort of still mentioning the con and stuff, but it's got my badge. So, yay.
That is actually a pretty awesome badge, mind you. It's engraved, isn't it?
No, it's just normal printed. It was sort of like a Steam-fur theme. And the problem is, with the writing like that, it looks kind of cool, but it's basically almost impossible to read from a distance. So if, you're randomly talking to someone like, who's this fur again? It's quite difficult to try, glance at their badge and say okay, now I know who I'm talking to.
It's what's his name? Rakuen?
Yeah, there was this one guy, I thought his name was Lasky or something, but it turns out it was Ask in 2 square brackets. And it was very difficult to see that at a distance. Plus, you don't expect someone's name to have punctuation marks. But, yeah.
So, I mean, what was the theme like? I mean, did you guys... Were people dressed up for the theme? Was there, steampunk... booze available, people with rifles, somebody with a gas mask.
No, so the
Big Daddies.
The theme wound up affecting basically the picture on the con book and the T-shirts, and one of the events, which was going on a steam train. Other than that, there was basically no influence of the theme whatsoever, and at the end, they also had a discussion on the next Lakeside Furs, and one of the topics that was up was, do we need a theme? Is it actually any point in having it? And people were saying, even if it's not influencing anything, it's quite nice just to have, a theme, just for fun.
Just for the laws, in case anyone wants to do something with it.
Well, I mean, Nordic furs, and that's actually quite interesting for me. Like, Nordic furs actually accommodates quite well for the English people, doesn't it?
I don't know.
I mean, at Lakeside, the official announcements were generally done in German and English. I mean, and the notes that were stuck up on the walls, those were usually either in both or just English. So they do not, there's non-German furs that go, and that is accommodated. It's just, I mean, for obvious reasons, if you've got mostly German-speaking furs, it's easier for them to speak in German, especially to each other, and some of them aren't, great with English, so they're not hugely comfortable speaking it.
Mm.
So you also don't want to, I don't know, I anyway didn't want to, impose and say, okay, you have to speak English, it feels rude on my part. I don't know.
No, I understand. But you don't want to be left out either.
Yeah, but like I say, you can find people, usually like if you saw someone on their own or something, I go talk there, or you find other people that you know or have met, the previous day. And so, I mean, it wasn't so much a problem. And pretty much, as the day goes on, it gets better. And especially if you're doing the activities and you've got, the group's more mixed, so you've got the other non-German speaking furs as well, then obviously English becomes a language everyone can understand, to a certain point. I mean, a couple of times, I'd be talking to one of the Austrian or German furs, and they'd ask, someone else, like, how do you say this in English? What's the word? Because obviously you don't always know everything. Well, it did bring up something which I found quite interesting, because, I mean, I don't know how you think about languages there, because I have this impression, okay, Europeans, they generally speak more than one language, but from those that were speaking English quite well, it seems most of them hadn't learnt English at school. They had and got the basics, but their ability to use English was often from other means, usually like video games, chatting to someone online, or, English movies or something. So, I don't know, I thought it was interesting.
That is quite interesting. Yeah, that happens more often than, in more cases than I know of people succeeding through just standard education. Like, people consuming media in a different language, it makes an incredible difference. Like, people who raid in WoW or something for people in a different language, they learn to speak English through that, or they learn to speak English through TV or video games. Like, that's sort of part of the nice way that games can teach people stuff. That's not just like how to play your game, but tangential learning things, which is awesome. Because video games.
Video games.
I think it's going to be fun.
It's actually pretty interesting. I mean, sort of just everything that's sort of the way that certain... would you actually have said that there are any differences from the people that you've spoken about, in respect to the way that we interact, say, here in South Africa versus there in, Austria or Germany?
I didn't catch the last part. It was a bit distorted.
I said, would you say that there's a difference between the way that there's an interaction in respect to, the ways that furs act around each other, between, say, South Africa and Germany or Austria?
I don't really think so. It seemed pretty much the same. I mean, yeah, it's...
We're becoming stock standard. This is bad.
What?
I said we're becoming standard. This is bad.
No, I mean, that's just how people are. I mean, you have friends, there were quite a few of them that went outside, would smoke, have a beer together, talk. I mean, that's normal. Then you'd have others that would spend more time on the laptop and stuff. So it's the same thing that we do. I imagine it's the same in most places because it's normal socializing. Yeah.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
pretty interesting.
yeah, I mean, I don't think there should be much difference between people just hanging out.
Yeah, I mean, and they've also got, I mean, there's also the Austrian furry forum, which seems quite similar to ours. I mean, from what I can understand from the overall structure, I mean, I can't read all the posts, but
Google Translate, because that's horrifying.
yeah, well, no, then it's, if I just make the whole thing translated, it's probably not going to teach me much anyway, and it'll be these weird sort of, yeah, weird results.
That would be interesting. Okay. Is there anything that you personally want to talk about in respect to, your time up there? How's the food?
Well, I mostly then cook for myself, and
How's
I'm
your
not
cooking?
well, my cooking is not great, so it's generally, find something that is sort of like an instant meal that can just be heated up, or things that you can fry quickly. I don't do any of the complicated sort of cooking. But I mean, luckily they have Spa here, because I was like, Spa's here. Turns out it's actually a Dutch company. That's all over the place. But I mean, they have, a couple of these ready-made things and some simple things. So that's pretty much what I do. Oh, the one thing that I found, which was, quite unexpected, because I mean, most of the food is quite similar to what we get, at least in the white cultures, for obvious reasons. But the thing I've seen, because I'm vegetarian, so there's often a limited choice then on, for example, a restaurant menu, but you get like this baked cheese, so usually like baked brie or baked camembert as like a meal. So it's like an entire, piece of camembert that's just sort of like baked or fried with some sort of coating, and that's like a thing. But I'd never seen that in South Africa, so I don't know if you guys have.
I don't think so. Like, fancy cheeses have never really proliferated much into our culture, as far as I know.
I think the closest to that
You can get them. I've just never seen them.
Am I here?
I've just never seen them cooked and served as like a meal. It's always been, some sort of side thing or something light.
Yeah, no, Ivic, you are still here. But yeah, I've seen like a burger that has a grilled or deep fried or something wheel of camembert on it. And that was apparently really good.
I mean, it is. I mean, you need something to go with it, because if it's just, cheese itself, that's quite dull. So, yeah.
Nom nom nom. God, I'm hungry now.
But you'd eat sushi. The last time I checked, you were eating sushi at some point.
Oh, I had like the vegetable sushis and things.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah, you can make them that way. I mean, I found.
Yeah, but it means. Wow.
Sushi specifically
Let's actually.
to
I
the
actually
rice
do
and
want
the
to
way of
speak about
preparing.
this quickly. Like, what exactly is the what changes with a vegetarian diet? Like, aside from the fact that meat isn't there, how do you get your protein?
So, I mean, the thing is, as I've heard, for most people, protein isn't an issue. In fact, most people get too much protein. I mean, there are other vitamins that are more of an issue than protein. But you can get, I think it's beans and things have these proteins. And you also get these, like, vegetarian meal type things. So in that case, that's one of the reasons why I shop at the Spa. Partly because it's familiar to me, and partly because they have these vegetarian meals, which, have the soy or what's the other one they use to make these things? Tofu and stuff. And those usually have, the protein, enough protein. So that's not really an issue. I mean, I think vitamin B12 is supposed to be the one that's quite difficult to get, but
Okay.
I still have like the dairy and eggs and stuff. So I think
Murderer!
I think that then gets everything. If you go like totally vegan, then it's a lot more difficult. And then you have to, I think, plan very carefully what you eat to make sure you get enough, or take a multivitamin. But I haven't collapsed, and
Not yet.
well, and my sister was vegetarian for like probably over 10 years now, and she's quite active and hasn't collapsed either. So.
I don't know. I mean, like it's an interesting sort of perspective. The entire idea of differences between vegetarians and meat eaters. I guess we could call ourselves. But I mean, like the thing is that I would always consider chicken to be a vegetable. So
Okay.
have some chicken. White meat's good for you. Try some tuna.
I'm not sure if that is meant in some joke way or if I'm supposed to seriously respond. I'll just let it slide.
What would your serious response be?
Wait,
hold on. I know. Wait. I know.
It would be dropping the ban hammer.
Really?
You have no power here.
Not here. No. Well,
Not
technically.
here, but where it counts.
Where it does count. But then again, like all I'm asking is that fish is a fruit.
Yeah.
Fish is a fruit and chicken's a vegetable.
That's the thing. I was trying, because I mean, it's quite difficult to sometimes meet up with people because you're working all the time, and I saw Tumul like twice or whatever, and he's quite a nice guy. I mean, he seems kind of or at least to me, he seemed kind of intimidating online, but then he was like really nice in real life, and he's a fan of sushi, and then I was like, hey, we should go to the sushi place. And I had this link, which I found, which was it was like a purely vegetarian sushi place. And he's like, oh, it's like, wait, this is without fish. It's like, no, I'm not going there. It's like, damn it. It was amusing.
Yeah. I mean, I know that you can make vegetarian meals to be quite, tasty, I guess.
Well, that's the other thing that comes up is, if people's idea of vegetarian cooking is just to take a normal meal that they would have had and just take the meat out, obviously it's not going to work very well because you're taking out, probably what it's based around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, I mean, if you go to the places or people that actually have skill cooking, unlike me, or places that, specialize in that, they obviously make something completely different, and it's really good. You don't miss it. I mean, it's not something I miss anymore.
Well, I mean, you still have cheese and eggs, which is pretty good.
Yeah, I like cheese.
I'm assuming that you have a lot of bread and a lot of wheat.
Fair amount. I mean, not huge amounts.
No, so
Yeah.
But also, there's there's a cafeteria on the campus, so I usually get the meals there for lunch. And so they've got a vegetarian meal, and I figure, they're bound to be slightly more nutritionally balanced than my own. So I figure that as long as I'm having one of those meals each day, I should be getting everything.
Okay. All right, that's interesting. Now we're sort of coming to the close of the podcast. Do you have anything on your heart that you'd like to sort of put out there? Your soul, like really, really deep. Dig into it, and just sort of get out there and say, like, I kill babies on a daily basis.
God damn it!
If I had to say something, it would probably be that I don't think I have a soul, because I don't agree with the idea of souls. But
Ouch.
You're going to have to repeat that?
No, I don't think there are such things as souls. So looking into the depths of my soul is a fairly futile prospect.
Okay, well, in that case, into the very depths of your stomach.
Ooh, I don't think you quite want to go there. That would be a bit messy and yeah.
I am hungry though.
But
Hypothalamus? Amygdala.
yeah,
God damn it, Ivic.
we could go to the back
you?
of my subconscious and see what's there. But,
Do
no,
we really want to take that trip?
It's a fun trip.
Maybe to you.
What are you afraid of there?
I don't know yet, but I'm gonna be afraid of it no matter what.
No, I mean, like I said, I hadn't really planned on anything for the podcast, so I think most of the things that are interesting or particularly interesting have been mentioned already. Yeah.
You have one of those don't do drugs, kids speeches, sort of, save somewhere.
No, do drugs, kids.
Yes, all of the drugs. What?
Oh, that reminds me. I'm wondering if it was the latest Sign on Happiness or if I just looked at an old one, but it was... yes. The latest one. Or is that the second latest one?
Is this the deepest part of your soul?
No, but this is relevant to drugs and staying in school. So, well, pretty much it's the drug dealer talking to this child and he asks, how much do you want? And, well, this person. Okay. And the person's like, I'll take everything you have. And the drug dealer's like, what? How can you afford all that? And the person says, well, it's really easy if you just stay in school. So if you want your drugs, stay in school.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't do school, stay in drugs.
Don't do... Yeah. Fair point. All right, but again, thank you very much, Rakuen, for joining us on the podcast. I'm sorry that it's taken us so long to get you back on here again. I'm sure that you actually have...
It was fun, and it was nice having, some sort of...
English conversation.
Some sort of plan, rather than the sort of... As I recall, the first one was quite unguided and strange.
Yeah. No, but these days we generally have a plan. It's talk around the topic and then possibly actually hit the issue.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Like I said, I told you other people you might want to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you
I'll
contacted
definitely get into contact with him. This week has been a bit of an issue for me. Classes started again and I've been genuinely tired most of the time when I get back home and I just sort of veg out. But yeah, so we'll definitely be getting back onto the bandwagon next week. Hopefully we'll be able to get one of your people on. Hopefully they're English.
Yeah, speaking though of tired, it does remind me the one... What?
No, continue.
Oh, okay. Ivic was breaking up a bit there. There was something I posted on the forum where I specifically asked Ivic what he thought about the hike that we did at Lakeside Firs, and he didn't respond. So
was this on my Ask Ivic thing?
No, it wasn't on the Ask Ivic. It was just on the What Are You Doing Now? Because we went on a long hike, so I mean, it wound up, I think, being 11 hours, and we climbed, I think, 1,100 meters vertically, and it was about 21 kilometers in distance.
Yes.
So,
how were your legs after that?
Yeah, they were pretty sore. Well, actually, mostly the right one. And then the next day, I didn't do anything. So.
I can imagine. No, that's a pretty intense hike. I actually, the thing is that sometimes on What Are You Doing Right Now, I tend to skim. I didn't think I actually caught that question, so I'm sorry if I missed it.
It was a good one. So we went up to the mountain, and then it was one of our activities. According to the con book, it said that it would be basically a total distance of 12 kilometers and 870 meters in altitude. But one of the guys recorded it with a GPS, and it seems like his results differ. But we went to an ice cave. So we did most of the first half of this hike in 30-degree heat. Then we went down into a cave, which was basically 0 degrees. And then back up. Well, when we got back up, it was fairly late, so the sun was going down. And there was a restaurant on the way, so we stopped there in both directions.
And then, your calves seized up while you were sitting down?
No, luckily, not completely. And anyway, on the way down, you didn't have to lift your legs, so...
Well, did you just sort of slide down? I could imagine that.
Some did fall.
Complimentary.
If you're on a slope, you just move one forward and you fall down that bit, then you move the next one forward, fall down that bit.
Complimentary
You don't
wheelchair.
have to lift. It was a good hike. tough though, especially if you don't hike normally.
I hike all the time.
I'm not big on hiking, for obvious reasons.
Actually, yeah. I haven't hiked in years, and I can actually say that with confidence for once. Like, normally I say, I haven't hiked in years. Next thing you know, like, hiked a month ago.
Yeah. Maybe I'll put the picture on the forum. Well, I mean, I was thinking of doing a write-up for Flavor actually about it, and then I'll have some pictures of things that were going on.
Sweet. Sounds like a good idea. We're looking out for that. So anyway, thank you very much, Rakuen, for joining us on the podcast again.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Really, really enjoyed having you on. We'd like to thank Victor, Cuttlewolf, Ninjin, who has now become part of the furniture. Thank you very much, Ninjin. You are now the coat rack.
Yay!
Kinkin ZA and Neon. I know Neon jumped in a little bit late, but he's online nonetheless. He'll be the moving sofa wolf.
They were very quiet, these people.
It was very, very quiet today.
Almost no comments. They don't like me. Well, I suppose they stayed, so...
They're afraid of your damn banhammer, dude.
You wield too much power.
Like, how many people have been banned on the forum? Come on. Like, almost none.
And I mean, given some of the, what's the word? Some of the drama that actually did sort of go on there, I mean, like, how many actually have been?
We're
None.
very, very lenient.
What was it? 2? In
Sometimes
total?
No, there's... I can actually find the number. Because it's... just give me like a second. No, so there are 4 people banned. But I think 2 are the same person. Oh, and... Yeah, 2 are the same person. And I think 1 was an alternative account for someone.
So they weren't banned for being stupid.
No, not for being stupid.
They were banned for being clever. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, no, so it was troll.
Just 4. Okay.
That's pretty awesome. See? We're a lenient
We're
bunch.
really nice to people.
Yeah.
So,
At least those are permanent bans. There were some temporary ones. But...
no. The temporary ones were needed, I think.
Oh.
Gives them some time to sit down and think.
They reflect on their life choices.
Yes.
God, don't we all have to do that at some point?
Furries are serious business.
Serious
So
business.
serious business. Much business. Such serious. Wow.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening to the podcast. We really hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks again, Rakuen, for joining us. And until next time, so yeah.
So yeah, cheers guys.
Good night.
Cheers.
Damn that cat.
And